Start kneeling down. Alabama
there you go.
jumped there.
It's kind of fitting. That's a fitting ending right there.
Sark knows that's it. That is going to do it. Texas is 2-0. We're not going to see anything more than that. But they look like a contender tonight.
Man, this week was so much better for college football, way better than week 1. We had a lot of closer games, a couple of upsets, and I'm going to break it all down in this video and tell you guys exactly how I feel about each team in my top 25 and any takeaways from their games, what I've seen, to what I think about them moving forward. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here's my top 25, but before we get into it, I want to explain that I'm going to have highlights throughout the whole video. I'm only going to flash this a couple times throughout the video, just so you guys have something to watch while I talk and explain everything. I think it would be a lot better than having you guys just stare at this graphic the entire time. So with that being said, let's start off with my number 1 team, the Georgia Bulldogs. They ended up playing Ball State and they won that game 45-3. Another lackluster team that Georgia seemed to not care about. That's what I really think is going on because their offense is not really performing that well. Their run blocking is terrible and their run game isn't that good either. Carson Beck has been playing okay. He did throw a pick in this game, but they have a lot to address before getting in the SEC play in my opinion. Then after Georgia, at number 2, I have the Michigan Wolverines. They beat UNLV 35-7. JJ McCarthy, his efficiency has been really good these first 2 weeks. It was 22-25. He had 2 touchdowns. Blake Corum ran for 80. They played a solid game and won in Michigan fashion. I'm really looking forward to when they play Penn State and Ohio State later on in the season because I want them to get actually tested because them coming out and then showing 60% of what they are is kind of annoying from time to time, but I understand. Then moving up to number 3, I have Florida State. They beat Southern Miss 66-13. Now I know a lot of people are going to want Texas to be in that 3 spot, but I just think Florida State absolutely dominated LSU, and I know that LSU was probably a little overranked, but we thought the same about Florida State. I just think LSU lost that game in humiliating fashion, even though Texas beat Alabama 1. I'll get right into Texas right after them. But anyway, they won this game, again, like I said, 66-13. Jordan Travis, he's 15 for 29, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns. They didn't really need him that much. It was just a solid game against an inferior opponent. But yeah, moving on to number 4, I have the Texas Longhorns, and they beat the Alabama Crimson Tide at home 34-24. And all I have to say is Quinn Ewers, he came out and he played well. He threw the deep ball well in this game, which he hasn't been able to do since last season. Texas defense, even though they were letting out big plays the entire game, they really came together at the end. They were able to get to Jalen Milroe. They were able to sack him, get him confused, make him throw those interceptions. And overall, it was just a great game for Texas. This game itself deserves its own video, but I'm going to talk about as much as I can. Alabama's secondary is terrible. They are trash. They have a lot of good players back there. Caleb Downs is really good. He's a freshman. He's going to be amazing. And they do have Kool-Aid McKinstry. He is also pretty good, but Arnold is terrible. He played terrible against Texas wide receivers the entire game. He was getting PI calls. He was in bad position. They need to figure out what they're going to do when they're playing these pass happy teams, or else Alabama's going to lose a few more games this year. And on the flip side, Texas, they have a pretty good balance. They were able to run the ball a little bit, not too much, not as much as Alabama could, but they did just enough to hit those passes and make Alabama think about what they were going to do next. But honestly, the real reason Alabama lost this game, other than what we talked about, are penalties. They had 9 or 10 penalties, and a penalty lost them the game in the end. Nick Saban needs to get this team flowing. Last year they had 15, this year they had 10. It's absolutely insane that a Nick Saban coached team is making this many errors. That has to get fixed too. But moving on from Texas, at number 5, I have USC. They played Stanford. They won 56-10. Blew them out completely. Caleb Williams, 19 for 22. The efficiency is insane. 281 yards, 3 touchdowns. They dominated this game. They did let up 350 yards from Stanford, but they did not let them score. I think Stanford had 4 fumbles or something, and then they threw a pick. So not helping themselves out. But USC definitely performed better than the next team, which is Ohio State. I have them at the 6th spot. They're moving back because they only beat Youngstown State 35-7, an FCS team. I know that they're figuring out their quarterback situation, and that's the reason they didn't score as much, and Youngstown played keep away the entire game. But you have to do better. They were still having problems in third down and short. The offense is still stagnant. It's looking a little bit better with Kyle McCord. I think he is going to be the starter. The defense played okay after the first drive. They had a couple other drives that weren't the best, but I think they're going to be the exact same defense as last year. I know Denzel Burke is going to be better, and a couple of those pieces have improved, but the overall defense itself is the same defense, and they are going to get gashed later in the year. That's what I think. And moving on to the 7th spot, I still have Penn State. They beat Delaware 63-7. Drew Alara 22 for 26. He was 204 yards, 1 touchdown, and then rushing wise, Katron Allen, he had 19 carries, 103 yards. They played a solid game against the FCS team, which is what they were supposed to do against an FCS team. Let's be honest, that Ohio State didn't do. I just think Ohio State is a better team than Penn State. I still have a couple questions about either team, so they're kind of like flip-flop. They could be 6 or 7. Then moving on, at the number 8 spot, I have the Washington Huskies, and oh my god, they scored less than 50 points. They only beat Tulsa 43-10. Michael Penix, 28 for 38, 410 yards. He had 3 touchdowns and a pick. Honestly, this game wasn't the cleanest showing from Washington. I really thought that they would play a little bit better, even though they were able to throw all over Tulsa. They kind of stayed close. 33 points isn't that much when you think about how high-powered Washington's offense is, and their defense still let Tulsa get like 300 some yards. So there's still a few questions about Washington before I move them up. That's why I have them at the 8th spot. After them at number 9, I have moved up Notre Dame to the number 9 spot. Sam Hartman, 15 for 24, 286 yards. He threw 4 touchdowns in this game as Notre Dame beat NC State 45-24. It was really 45-17, but NC State got a garbage touchdown at the end. It's whatever. Estime had 134 yards rushing. They looked really good finally against a real opponent. Notre Dame looked good. They did give up a lot of yards. They gave up 350 yards. But overall, the team looked really good, and they looked a lot better than Tennessee, which played Austin Peay. And they only won that game, what was it, 30-6, I think? Actually, I think I'm giving them too much credit. I'm pretty sure it was 30-13, which is absolutely horrible against Austin Peay. And speaking of that game, Joe Milton was 21 for 33, 228 yards with 2 touchdowns. He was having problems early. He was 1 for 6 for 8 yards. It was bad. They were able to run all over them though. Wright had 118. But on the other side, Austin Peay, their quarterback, 29 for 39, 260 yards and a touchdown. This Tennessee defense is not looking good, especially against the pass. So any pass-happy team, they're going to be really happy to play Tennessee. And right behind Tennessee, at the 11th spot, the Alabama Crimson Tide. I moved them all the way down there because I'm pretty sure that Alabama's overrated. We talked about them being overrated. They even lost by 10 at home to Texas, a team that constantly lets itself down every year. I'm sorry, but we are dropping them out of the top 10. Right after Alabama, I have Oregon sitting at the 12th spot. I had them jumping Utah for reasons I'm about to talk about, but they won their game against Texas Tech at Texas Tech, 38-30. Bo Nix, 32 for 44, 360 yards, 2 touchdowns. The real problem, though, in this game was Texas Tech's quarterback. He was 24 for 40. He had 280 some yards. He had 3 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. They also fumbled the ball twice. Texas Tech could have won this game, and they probably would have if those mistakes weren't made in the first place. I don't think Oregon turned the ball over once, and to have 4 or 5 is absolutely unforgivable. You're not going to win a game like that. They would have won this game, and they let it go. But Oregon looked like a good team the entire time. Their defense is definitely a little lackluster. Texas Tech was able to run and pass on them, so they're definitely susceptible. And then coming right after them, I have Utah. They played Baylor. They won that game 20-13. They were losing the entire game until the end, and they scored 2 touchdowns to finally get themselves in position to win. And Baylor almost came back and won at the end because of a no call. It might have been pass interference. It might not have been. It wasn't called, but Baylor almost upset Utah. And I really thought Utah was the better team, which obviously they are. They just had a little bit of a scare. Nate Johnson had to come in and save them. He was 6 for 7, 82 yards. But the real story was Jackson. He had 129 yards rushing. I'm pretty sure their other quarterback was like 6 for 19, which is god awful. I'm glad they made that switch. They would have lost if they didn't. Then coming right behind Utah, I have Oregon State, another Pac-12 team. They won their game 55-7 over UC Davis. DJ Uyunglele, 8 for 13, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not really a lot. They ran for a lot of yards in this game. They ran for like 270 yards, which is honestly what you're supposed to do. Oregon State is a pretty balanced defense as well. I'm really liking them. And then rounding out the top 15, we have LSU. LSU did not move, even though they beat Grambling State 72-10. Now it's really funny. At the end of the first quarter is 14-10, and I was kind of scared for LSU for a second, but they decided to pull away in every other quarter. Jaden Daniels is 18 for 24, 270 yards, 5 touchdowns, but I'm kind of scared for the LSU defense, even their secondary, man. Grambling was able to have like 170 yards rushing, over 100 from a guy, and let some big passes off too. So I don't know. LSU has a lot to work on. They let up 320 yards in this game, even though they blew them out. I still think they're a top 15 team, which is why I have them there. Moving on, after LSU, I have the Duke Blue Devils. They beat Lafayette 42-7. Something crazy about this game, their starting quarterback, Riley Leonard, he was 12 for 12, 136 yards with a touchdown. And the backup, Bellin, I think that's how you say his name, was 8 for 8, 118 yards, also with a touchdown. So together, they were 20 for 20, a perfect passing game, which is honestly crazy. Jordan Waters had 112 yards rushing. Duke played pretty well, even though they were just playing Lafayette. I'm going to give them their props. They're my 16th ranked team right now. After them, we have Kansas State. They beat Troy 42-13. Now, the thing about this game, I was watching some reactions and videos and predictions saying that people thought Troy was going to upset Kansas State or keep it really close. I didn't really think it was going to be close because Kansas State is a really good team. Will Howard is a good quarterback. I know Troy has a good defense and their offense is like okay, but they were no match for Kansas State. And Will Howard, he was 21 for 32, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. But overall, they scored 400 yards against that Troy defense, and they were able to run up the score on them. Moving to the 18th spot, I kind of went back and forth between these. I did put Ole Miss at the 18th spot, not Oklahoma. And the reason I put them there is they did beat Tulane at home. Tulane, another ranked team that was missing their quarterback. So it's really up in the air who you guys think like deserves that spot. I guarantee Oklahoma fans think they should be higher. Ole Miss fans think they should be higher. But I'm going to put Ole Miss there. They beat a ranked team at home. Jackson Dart, he was 17 for 27, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Kai Horton, which was Tulane's quarterback, not Pratt, which is their really good quarterback. He was 15 for 37, 231 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The biggest thing is Tulane in this game, they held Ole Miss to 1 for 13 on 3rd down, which is absolutely insane. And they were able to hold their running backs to only 89 yards. Tulane played a really good game. If they wouldn't have fumbled those 2 times or the interception, like they could have won. This game was a lot more different than you think. Like 37-20, you think it's like a little lopsided, but it was 20-17. And then Tulane completely fell apart. They let them score a touchdown off of 4th down, and then they threw a pick instantly, and that got brought back as a touchdown. I do think Ole Miss is still a little bit overrated. I honestly believe Tulane would have beat them if Pratt was able to play in this game, but I'm going to give them their props. They're at my 18th spot, and then at the 19th spot is Oklahoma. They actually beat SMU 28-11. That game was a low-scoring game. Everyone said that was going to be a high-scoring game. It was not at all. Dylan Gabriel was 19 for 27, 176 yards with 4 touchdown passes, but they didn't have any really long deep balls. They had a couple, but it wasn't like the Oklahoma that you're used to. But they also ran for 117 yards. The run defense for SMU really isn't the best. Oklahoma had more rushing yards in this game than passing, which is a little crazy, and SMU actually outgained Oklahoma by 2 yards in general. But they had an interception, they had a couple fumbles, and that's why I decided to put Ole Miss over them, because Oklahoma didn't really outplay them as much. Neither did Ole Miss, so we gotta take like the better opponent. I think Tulane is better than SMU, so that's why Ole Miss is above Oklahoma. You guys get it. And next, run on my top 20. Colorado, they beat Nebraska at home 36-14. Shadur Sanders 31 for 42, almost 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. This team is absolutely crazy. They're playing so well. Their defense played so much better in this game, but Nebraska has a terrible offense. I'm pretty sure they have 4 fumbles. They did have 4 fumbles and an interception, 5 turnovers. You're not going to win with 5 turnovers. They were able to run for over 200 yards on Colorado, which everyone thought they would be able to do, and they did. But turning the ball over just equals you losing every single time. Jeff Sims, he is a terrible quarterback. They need to figure something else out, because teams that can pass the ball are going to run up the score, and with Jeff Sims, you're not going to be able to keep pace with them. Xavier Weaver had 170 yards. They could not guard this man to save their lives. I'm really excited for Colorado. I hope they could keep the run going. Then after them, I have the North Carolina Tar Heels. I moved them all the way back to the 21 spot because they almost lost to Appalachian State at home. Drake May was 31 for 30, 208 yards. They only won 40-34 in double overtime. They were able to run for 234 yards with one guy and like 320 altogether. The yards were pretty close. They both had around 500 yards. This UNC defense is absolutely terrible. I don't know how they played so much better against South Carolina, but they couldn't stop a nosebleed in this game, and I just don't think Drake May can carry this team that much further. They're really scaring me, but I'm going to keep them at the 21 spot. And then after them, we have the Miami Hurricanes getting into the top 25. They beat Texas A&M 48-33. They got their revenge from last year. Tyler Van Dyke, 21 for 30, almost 400 yards passing, 5 touchdowns. And that was the big difference in this game, because Connor Wegman, he was 31 for 53, 340 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, but he had 2 interceptions. Interceptions matter. They both fumbled once, but those 2 interceptions cost Texas A&M. This was a very evenly fought game. It was very even. Those 2 turnovers were the reason Texas A&M lost. They lost by 2 possessions. That's what it was. And they made too many mistakes. Both teams couldn't run the ball, but they could pass. Their secondaries both aren't the best. Miami was actually hitting hard, though, because Texas A&M, honestly, they threw for 23 more attempts and still threw for less yards. So credit to Miami. Welcome back to the top 25. And after Miami, I have the Clemson Tigers. They won their game 66-17 against Charleston Southern. It was honestly kind of ugly because Clemson was losing this game, or they were tied like 14-14 at the end of the first, and everyone was losing their shit. I remember going on Twitter and seeing everybody like, Clemson is tied with Charleston Southern, and it didn't really shock me because of how they were playing this year, but they pulled away like crazy in the third quarter. Kate Klubnik, 28 for 37, 315 yards. He had 4 touchdowns and a pick 6. Charleston Southern had like 7 total yards in this game and 14 points because of the mistakes that Clemson made. And I'm telling you, if they fix those mistakes, Clemson would be a good team, because Charleston Southern only had 4 first downs and 73 yards this entire game. After them at the 24th spot, welcome to the top 25, Washington State. They won this game against Wisconsin 31-22, and honestly, the point of this game, the reason Wisconsin lost, 3 fumbles, 3 turnovers. It's that simple. Fix the mistakes and they probably would have won. Washington State, they put up a great fight. Their defense did not let Wisconsin run the ball, and when Wisconsin cannot run the ball, they lose, and that's exactly what happened. So congrats, Washington State. You guys are in the top 25. And right after them, rounding it out, I have Iowa. Okay, I know people aren't going to agree with this Iowa one, but there's a bunch of teams on the outside like UCF, UCLA, that also deserve to be in here, but I think Iowa's defense is just something different, and Cade McNamara is a little bit better than Petras from last year. I think they can do a lot in the Big Ten, even though they're not fully there yet. They're just figuring stuff out. That's why I have them at the 25th spot. They beat Iowa State 20-13. McNamara didn't look too bad. Their defense looked okay. That game is always a struggle, so I do see Iowa improving, and that's why I gave them the 25th spot. And that rounds out my entire top 25. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like and comment in the description below. Let me know what I can do better and your thoughts on where I put these teams and my explanations. I'm gonna have the next one out Saturday night for week 3, so watch out for this video. I did upload early Sunday morning today just because last night I was out and I was not able to upload it then. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.